Hi, this is Basic Folk, where we have honest conversations with folk musicians. I'm your host, Cindy Howes, and excited to introduce you, if you are not yet familiar, with Joe Troop, who is the frontman for the Buenos Aires Latin grass group Che Apalache. More on what we talk about after we thank our sponsors for Basic Folk. Basic Folk is supported by Lindsay Myers from Elemento Management, who encourages you to support independent artists by going to live shows, hosting a house concert, and buying directly from artists. Joe Troop has loved bluegrass ever since he was 15 years old, and he kind of discovered bluegrass at the same time he also discovered his attraction to men. As a North Carolina native, Troop is a proud out gay man in a world that doesn't always accept him, the rural South. Through his travels throughout Spain, Japan, and Argentina, he's become an advocate for gay and immigrant rights. Joe talks about all this and more, about how he can expertly subvert a hot topic in his songs and in his life to a crowd that might not be openly ready to talk about it. Joe has a very interesting mind. It is wonderful to hear about his experiences living abroad, being out in the bluegrass world, working with Bela Fleck, and his relationships to both conservatives and liberals. I hope you enjoy. I'm going to play a clip of Che Apalache right now. This is a song called Maria, and then we'll get to our conversation with Joe Troop on Basic Folk.
Maria, Maria del agua, Maria del cielo, qué linda María. María, María divina, qué suerte que tuve tenerte en mi vida. Llámalo ingeniero, dale que llama, dile que traiga leña, que quiero quemar la pena que hiere mi corazón. Baby.
Joe Troop, thanks so much for doing this and taking the time.
You're welcome, Cindy Howes. It's a pleasure to be here.
Big fan of your music, so this is pretty exciting. And also, there's so much to talk about with you. You have 17 different narratives going on, so we could be here for a long time talking. But I'll try to use my time wisely.
That's good, so people don't get bored.
Yeah, as if. Okay, so you grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which for people who haven't been there, what is that town like?
Well, it's in the Piedmont foothills. It's within earshot of a little mountain range called the Saura Mountains, which are within earshot of the Appalachian Mountains. So it's almost hillbilly, but it's lowlander.
So I know about the pretty famous story, the Joe Troop famous story when you were 15, you fell in love with bluegrass. But what about before then? Where was music in your life growing up?
I'm kind of like a suburban kid. So my family's not particularly musical, but we went to a Moravian church, which is a very musical entity. We grew up singing Bach chorales, and the music's really pretty. And I grew up.
Is that a Christian church?
Yeah, it's Protestant. My family wasn't particularly religious, thank God. So we had, I got to experience church from a more spiritual standpoint, not so much a dogmatic standpoint. And I really liked the music, and my older brother was very involved in the youth group, and so he was very enthusiastic about it. And the traditions are nice. At Home Moravian, we drank coffee in church and stuff, so that was really cool. And then at school, I got really big into musical theater. That was like the gay red flag went up. Of course, I was I think I got to be, I can't remember. I think I was Ali Baba in 1001 Arabian Nights or something, and that was my big moment where it's I was born for the stage.
Is that where you really started to sing?
No, I started singing I was always singing. I had a little tape recorder. I don't remember how old I was. Maybe I was 9 or something. I got a tape recorder, and I just used to record myself singing into it and make up songs, and then that's how I played. And I remember some people, my parents just kind of let me do whatever I wanted to, and I would play piano. There was a piano in the house. My paternal grandmother was a pianist. My mother's brother was a trumpet player. He was a hobbyist banjo player. Some of the more focused musicians, I think, were my great-grandparents, but I never met them. But so there was music around, but there were no professional musicians in my family. My brother was a pianist, and he was 8 or 9 years older than me. He is 8 or 9 years older than me, and he strung me along, and we just played around making music all the time. Playing keyboards and singing, but then, you know, when I was 15, I got bit by the stringed instrument bug, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
Yeah, I really love that story. It's such an epic tale where you started. You've been playing bluegrass since you were 15, that's right?
Right. That's when I started.
I don't know how many times you've told this story, whether or not you're sick of telling it, but I can say that you first encountered bluegrass from camp counselors when they were playing standards around a campfire at summer camp in western North Carolina, which is actually it sounds like that story was like a pretty formative 24 hours for you. Yeah,
it was. It was actually at my school went on a fall retreat. I think it was either in September or October. And heck, I may have seen bluegrass before, but there was something in me that needed that then. I don't recall. And it's all kind of a blur, that whole moment in my life, that whatever that year was, like, whatever was going on in my brain was, I don't know. When I think back on it, I can't remember what sequence some of the events happened in, but there were a couple. My brother took me on a camping trip, and on the way, he noticed that Doc Watson was playing at a little roadside diner, so I went in and I sat literally right beside Doc Watson and watched an entire show.
Whoa.
And and I was and I can't remember if that was after or before the camp experience where these couple counselors got out their instruments and started playing. And what else? My brother also gave me mixed tapes. He was very, very. He was like the consummate good big brother. I can't thank him enough. He was really, really just a great role model for me. And he gave me all these mixed tapes, you know, tons of them. But on some of them, there was bluegrass, and there was a recording of Bela Fleck, and I just fell in love with all those sounds. I don't even know if I knew what they were.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't identify the instruments, but I just got those three things, that seeing Doc Watson and then getting all those tapes from my brother that had this music on it, and then the camp counselors playing all around a fire. To me, it's all the same era. It may have been over the course of a year and a half. I can't recall.
I do really like the legend of the story. You know, even though it you may have told the story a bunch of like hundreds of times. Like, I've been, looking things up about you and your music, and reading that story like 3 or 4 different times. It's like kind of breathtaking.
Oh, it was a huge moment in my life to that point. And also what's cool, like, my niece is about to turn 14, and I'm starting to recall how little I was, not little, but also, in my worldview at that point, I was myself. I felt like myself. I don't feel that different than I did back then.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a huge moment. You don't get those kind of huge moments at 36 that you did when you were 14 or 15.
Totally.
But yeah, it was great. So I spent a lot of time writing that essay to try to give it a poetic framing that made it worthy of what the moment means to me, because it means so much to me that happened.
So let me just read this quote that you said. You said, "The music sent a surge of psychedelic lightning bolts, crystal fracturing across my imagination. The cosmos had erupted through the earth. Fireside bluegrass upon a night sky was the biggest sound I had ever heard," which is so awesome.
Yeah, I was really proud of that.
It was really good.
I labored over that. I really tried to make it, because, I love being a wordsmith. I love trying to make words do something cool. And when I found crystal fracturing, I was like, that's it. And I was like, what the hell does that even mean?
Yeah.
I asked a friend, does crystal fracturing exist? And she said, it does. Yeah, sure, it does. It sounds like it does. It does to my brain. I was like, great. Because sometimes, like, that native speaker kind of sixth sense of interpretation coincides with other souls that are native speakers with that sixth sense. and it works, and that's what poetry revolves around, I suppose. So I don't know. When I found that, I was like, hell yeah, that's what it is. Psychedelic lightning bolts.
It's great. And then from there, you fall in love.
I'm glad you like that.
Oh yeah, totally. So again, my problem, Joe, is that everything I would read about you, I'd be like, I need a minute to digest what is actually being said here and how I actually want to dig deeper into this topic, because you just have a lot going on. So it's a challenge. So I want to know, like, we'll come back to the subsequent 24 hours of that camp journey. But
okay.
First, for the bluegrass, after you just completely fell in love with it, how was that music incorporated into your life at 15?
Well, I think, I don't remember how this, God, it's such a blur. I think right after that experience, I got a CD from, back when people still bought CDs. It was a Appalachian Stomp. It was just this like bluegrass compilation CD. And as my memory sort of is playing tricks on me, because I feel like I even listened to that driving out of that camp. Maybe I already had the CD. I don't remember. But all I know is that leaving that camp and leaving that experience, I had a lot going through my head, but I just knew I was going to be a bluegrass musician. I just had to, because it went with the scenery too. I was up in Appalachia, and it felt so mystical. It felt so spiritually satisfying, and I felt like the way the air filtered through my nostrils was different than what I had experienced as a lowlander, and that music was my gateway into Appalachian culture and just being in the mountains, and I love it. I still love it. I've been like rejoicing in the Appalachians for 2.5 weeks now, just breathing in what a black walnut looks like and how the branches curl onto the sky and how it kind of looks like a fern because the leaves fall in these beautiful patterns. And then you compare that to, an oak tree or a river birch or any other. I mean, it's just the biodiversity of the region's amazing. And I don't know. I forgot what your question was, so I'm just rambling.
I don't know, but I'll be right there. It sounds great.
Okay. Yeah, it is great. I mean, this is an incredibly dense forest. Of course, it isn't what it was. There used to be a canopy stretching all the way from Florida up into, well up into Canada. A squirrel could actually migrate all the way from Florida up into Canada without touching the ground. It was so dense back, pre-Columbian era.
Also, so first of all, the question was like bluegrass, how it was incorporated into your life after that camp. So did you actually start playing banjo?
Yeah. My dad took me up to the pawn shop and he got me a Chinese banjo from Campbell Pawn in Winston-Salem. And I started taking lessons from a guy named Gary Chilton at, I think it was a Music Loft or something like that, some little music store. And he was awesome. He taught me a bunch. And then he sent me to Jody King, who I took with for a couple years. And then he sent me to Craig Smith, who I took with for another 1.5 years or so. And I was banjo obsessed as a teenager. That's all I did. And along the way, my friend Amy Callahan gave me a fiddle. My friend Anna Shirley taught me how to play a little bit. And I took a lesson or two. And then I got a mandolin, all hand-me-down or pawn shop instruments. And that's all I really cared about. I just played, I don't know, 5 to 9 hours a day.
Wow. Can you easily pick up any instrument?
Not now. Goodness, no. I can't do anything now easily. But back then, I don't know if it was easy or if I just, when you're learning something, you can make a lot of progress if you have a lot of time. I was a spoiled kid. I didn't have to do anything. I had no responsibility. I just had to do my homework and then I could play. And I listened. I also listened so much. I was such an attentive listener. I really loved listening to music. I still do, but I don't think I'll ever listen like I did back then. Maybe I remember it as I'm just not sure. I don't know. Like I said in that essay, psychedelic lightning bolts, crystal fracturing in my brain. It was so intense. I was so in love with listening as a teenager.
Sounds like you were like very much like a sponge.
I guess so. I suppose so. As many others are, you know. I was just into what I was into, and yeah, that's what I was doing.
So also at that camp, I don't know if this is true, but you discovered that you were attracted to boys, attracted to men.
I digested that information at that point. That's when I realized, because I got called out. I think that's what it was. Like beforehand, I would be in these like transfixed stares looking at my classmates, looking at their bodies, and some of them would look back kind of quizzically. I don't know, I just didn't realize what it meant, but it was there that I realized that, oh, this is I'm gay. I am so gay. I am very, very, very gay, and I have to mitigate these circumstances. And this was 1997, so this is, the year before Matthew Shepard got murdered in Wyoming. That, just so you kind of have like a historical landmark of what the attitudes towards gay people were in rural America. And even though Winston-Salem's a larger town, it's still a rural adjacent city. So the people just did not, at least in my world as a kid, people didn't talk about it. There was a character on The Real World who had gotten famous, Pedro from The Real World, but he was dying of AIDS. That was the big gay celebrity at the time. So things looked pretty damn dismal.
Yeah.
For it. So I was really stressing that. And it was at that camp that I was standing and looking into the bathroom, or whatever you call it, the bathing area, and I was just like, wow, everyone's naked. This is awesome. And then one of the other kids said, no peeking. And I was like, oh, I'm into that, but they're not into that. What the fuck does this mean? Kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was where I guess I was forced into hiding it, or just not denying it, because I never denied it to myself. Mm-hmm. I never went, I don't understand that kind of denial. Maybe I'm denying something. Maybe I deny other things. I think I've experienced denial, but with regards to sexuality, I never did.
So how did everyone else's feelings about homosexuality hinder your relationship to your own sexuality?
Completely. That's the thing. Had it been had there been a more welcoming environment for me to just, live my sexuality as a teenager, I would have, but I didn't. So I got emotionally fucked up because of it. And it's no one's fault. I mean, society changes and things are opening up, but hell, ask the president of Uganda what he thinks about homosexuality. It's still terrible for a lot of people in a lot of areas of the world. I'm very grateful that I got to come into my sexuality when I did, because it was there had already been a huge amount of work put into humanizing gays, and in certain places in the country we already were, even in the late 90s, more so than in North Carolina at least. But anyhow, that going back to your question, the most common word for teenage boys at that time was faggot. That was said all the time. Faggot, 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 but also with malice. So there's this concept in Japan called kotodama, which means the spirit of the word. And the spirit of the word, particularly that word, was, quite demonic, at least how it was said. Mm. And it's also literal meaning. Of course, I read that in the dictionary because I was a dorky, nerdy kid. You were a dictionary kid. Hell yeah, I grabbed the dictionary. I wanted to know what the words meant. So a faggot was a bundle of burning rods thrown into a pyre, and I was like, God, this is just fire and brimstone. Things don't look good for the gays. And there was no adult ally. There was nothing. Until I will say this, my high school, I had a couple gay teachers, but they could not be out because they would have been fired, clearly. And in fact, I later learned that on many occasions their careers were jeopardized by rumors being spread and questionable moral judgment, questionable assessment of their morality by the hordes of people infected by Judeo-Christian values. And anyway, these people could not be adult allies, though they were in a way, because it was obvious they were gay. But there were, I had my Spanish high school teacher one time, like, I was testing the waters and I made it an overtly homophobic statement in class against one of the teachers that I knew was gay. And Mr. Boyce sternly reprimanded me and told me to shut the fuck up, and that in his classroom that wasn't okay. And I was like, hell yes, Mr. Boyce. So I did have an ally, but I wasn't in direct communication with him about it. And the flip side of that is, of course, I was saying something homophobic. So it's a very interesting story, but he really had our backs. And then, in my elementary school and middle school, there were also gay teachers, but it was never spoken about. It was spoken about hushedly. And that's what's so weird about it. It was like there was some veil about it. It was, you just don't talk about that. You just don't talk about it. We don't need to rationalize this yet.
You do this thing, I was going to talk to you later about it in the interview, where you try to subvert a narrative in your political themes in some of Che Apalache's songs.
Yeah.
And it seems as though maybe that's what you were just talking about there might have been like the seed of how you learned to so expertly do that.
I think there's something. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, can you give for people who are listening, maybe give an example of how you do that in a song?
Well, for example, doing it in a song, I don't know. How I do it in life is like, knowing that I'm, I still have these experiences all the time because of the circles. Because of the diversity of the worlds that I'm coasting through. But I'll come across someone who doesn't know I'm gay unless I'm traveling with my husband, which I have been for the past few weeks. So I've seen some people in these in these vacations kind of look at me like, it's like, okay, you go ahead and deal with the fact that you're seeing a homosexual for the first time. Go ahead. I just have to deal with that. It's a pain in the ass, actually, but I still deal with it. It's like, okay, here with this one has to process this. Let him process it. Oh Lord. But and then sometimes when I know someone is about to find out that I'm gay, I throw some shit out there that might fuck with their narrative later because they need it. So I'll give them what they want. I'll give them the kind of highlights of me that can kind of, because we're always communicating, and animals communicate, and they leave impressions on people, on other animals, and that's what we do. And I try to leave a very good impression upon people, and then watch their worldview come tumbling down when they find out that I'm a homosexual. I've done that so many times. I could write a book about just that.
But you also do that in your song.
Yeah, in song, I do that because it's I came to realize that because of this, because I was equipped with a very rural musical vernacular, that I had an ability to communicate with that style of vernacular, because I was raised Southern, and I became a bluegrass musician, so I've sung so many songs, and I know how words are used around in this region, and just kind of giving them an unexpected twist, a shift in the narrative from what the status quo would want them to go in. I just played around with that. I've been playing around with that for a long time, but recently I've been having more fun with it because I feel like I'm sort of throwing ideological bombs. I was in the car cackling like a lunatic a few weeks ago, just driving through Appalachia and just being like, just because it does leave people scratching their heads, and they ought to, so I don't know. I just do it because I have to, because I love being from where I'm from, and I love this society, but there's certain things that I don't love about it, and that directly affect me.
Yeah.
So that's, what else am I going to do? I've been cornered, so I'm going to come back at them with the only tools that I have, because I'm not a fighter. I'd get my ass kicked. So I better I try to write write something or say something or sing something clever and then leave people thinking. So I got used to that from an early age, having to take a conflicting moment and intelligently diffuse the tension with some sort of psychological maneuver. You know, that's how I've had to navigate my world for so long. That's a skill I've developed.
Well, let me just explain for somebody listening who doesn't know what we're talking about. So Che Apalache have a couple of songs that are very political, but you present these songs masked in a traditionally Southern mountain gospel songs. Like The Wall is a good example. The Che Apalache song, The Wall, where it sounds like a beautiful, easy Southern gospel song to listen to. And then all of a sudden the lyrics turn to like, if this ridiculous thing comes true where Trump is going to build this wall, we're just going to have to tear it down. And that's basically what we're talking about. So you say, I want people who hate these things, immigrants' rights, and gay people to first fall in love with us almost like someone would as a child, because art has that innocence and beauty that's primordial. Good word, by the way. So does it work? Like, what kind of reactions do you get?
Oh, it works. It leaves people. It leaves the audience that I'm targeting sometimes, if when on the occasion that I can get in front of them, it leaves them sort of uncomfortable. It leaves them very uncomfortable, and that's what we want. I want to make them uncomfortable, because it challenges whatever they've been told, and it's hard to get inside of that mentality. But I've been around it a lot. I guess I'm more inside of it than sort of the other extreme, which is the woke leftist person who has almost no empathy for these people as people. Just the realization that certain thoughts, that certain ideas have never been presented to them at all in a way that they could decipher, because there's a sort of a cultural insensitivity in media in general that excludes them from any quote unquote leftist narrative. So by twisting these traditions that have been usurped by right-wing ideologues and putting them back in the work, I feel like I just want to be like Woody Guthrie, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just
call everyone out for their shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And try to restore justice to the same people who've been disenfranchised. I do think along those terms. And I know a lot of people do not agree with empathizing with the quote unquote enemy. But I do. I don't have any reason why not to, because I'm coming from a position of privilege to where I can, because I've just seen the same archetypes repeated all over the world in different languages, different societies, but it's always the same thing. And there's a level of classism involved. There's a level of urban media trumps rural sensibilities. No. I really do want to. I hope that we can get in front of a lot of rural audiences in the coming years and present this material and present these ideas and sort of, diffuse the very tense ideologies that are forming.
What about on the flip side of that, performing in front of an extremely liberal audience who maybe demonizes a conservative Southern person?
Yeah, that's equally frustrating from my perspective, because a lot of people think they get it so much. They know that everyone's crazy in North Carolina. The amount of people that come up to talk to me about how terrible North Carolina is. I'm like, you've never been there, have you? It's pretty chill. There's a bunch of knuckleheads that rule the roost because they've allowed the most cantankerous faction to have power. So there has to be a lot of grassroots movements that sort of oust them from their power. But there's also a lot of very creative thinkers roaming around in this area as well. So I don't know. I sometimes get frustrated by wokeness, because wokeness leaves no room for growth, because anyone has a slip of a tongue and they're automatically sacrificed in media. They get attacked viciously, and it's like, come on, they have some learning to do, but I don't know. I believe in the humans' capacity to evolve,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen it a lot in myself and in a lot of other people's.
So you kind of were talking about this earlier, code switching, which I wanted to know. So you said the bluegrass is a very heteronormative place. I've learned how to code switch for it, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Well, I can do the dude guy broman thing because I'm not. Well, I might be more effeminate than I think I am, but in my vision of self, I'm kind of a dude. In my as I was coming into my gay sexuality and meeting other young gays in America, they said, well, you're butch or you're a bro, or those are the things. And I was like, okay.
When did you finally come out?
When I was 19, freshman year of college. I came out to my friend Shannon, who was one of the young ladies I was probably stringing along because I was such a good friend with her. I was like, oh, I just love Shannon. I love hanging out, eating burritos. And then we were having this really big heart-to-heart, and I was like, I have to tell you something. And she thought I was going to tell her I loved her, and I told her I'm gay.
Oh.
It was awful. But then I got that off my chest, and then I had my coming out parade. I told, everyone.
How did it feel?
Felt really good. Incidentally, one of the guys who helped me inadvertently was a bluegrass guitarist. He said, something troubling you, boy. You need to spill the poison. You better get it out or it's going to kill you. I can see it on your face. He was crazy dude. Train wreck of a human, but he gave me good advice. And that sort of spill the poison was something that resonated with me a lot. So I just I spilled the poison. And then I told my family slowly, and then I moved to Spain.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, drop the gay bomb, and then I was like, all right, bye. and Spain was great. It was so great.
Yes, you had all these feelings about when you first, realized that you were homosexual. You had all these feelings and fears, and there were all these taboos in the the culture that you were in. But then you moved to Spain, and it seemed like nobody cared.
Well, that's not entirely true, because I was with a host family and I had to come out to them too. And it's like being a gay person quickly proved to be exhausting. Had to keep coming out to my roommate and coming out to this person. It's like you come out 1,000 sometimes, and by the 1,000th time you're like, all right, whatever, But it's a more tolerant society, Andalusia, especially when you're a foreigner. You don't have to deal with anyone else's expectations of you, because you're, above all else, you're a foreigner.
Right. So was that more your identity than being a gay man?
Yeah, gay was very much a flor de piel. How do you say that? It was on the tip of my tongue because I was still, I had to communicate that. God, it's so complex because I wanted to communicate that and and have people rejoice in it, but it was also the kind of thing you say I'm gay. And they're like, oh, why are you rubbing it in my face? And there's so many mixed reactions. I've seen them all. It's just you don't get, it kind of creates this sort of lack of satisfaction. There's a gap between self-expression and acceptance, and then learning to cope with that was something that was the next process that was into coming out. Once you start coming out and you start dealing with that, you have to deal with the fact that, oh, just because I came out doesn't mean that everyone else is going to be in my parade and everything's going to be wonderful. Now I have to deal with these consequences and navigate this, and then you have to deal with people's opinions which you think are absolutely terrible, but there's nothing you can do to change them because most people opine that way. So that was incredibly frustrating, So I was dealing with that in my early 20s, throughout my early 20s, to the point where then eventually when I was, by the time I moved to Argentina when I was 26, no one gave a fuck because I was ostensibly a full-fledged adult.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, but when you're navigating that stuff as a kid, an adolescent, or a young adult, it's different. And when you're finally, on your own, it's like, I'll do whatever I want. No one can stop me. Who cares? Fuck them all. But I love them. Fuck them all, but I love them was kind of like my MO.
That's cool. I love
for the
it.
naysayers. Yeah.
So you moved to Buenos Aires and you were teaching and performing Appalachian folk music. I read in an interview that you gave that it's tricky to play string band music in South America because of the history of the United States interfering with South American infrastructure government.
Yeah, people in Latin America and probably in other places in the world, because Cold War interventionist tactics, American meddling in Latin America has created what's happening now, even more so in the Northern Triangle, like in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. But in Argentina, they instigated, the CIA in the Southern Cone overthrew democratically elected governments, worked with right-wing nutballs and dictators on the ground. Videla in the case of Argentina, Pinochet in the case of Chile, and a lot of other places had their own thing going on. So that history devastated these places. We're talking about, we rejoice in our free speech. Well, the country that allows us to rejoice in our free speech infringed upon the right of free speech to other people. And so I just find this deeply upsetting. And when I am rejected because of where I'm from, I don't mind it. I'm like, well, I hope that I can show them that there is that the people are not the entity, and that's kind of like my MO. As I down there, I try to say that's true, because sometimes I'll be playing and they'll say "Yankee de mierda, you fucking American bastard," like I don't want to hear this crap. It's like
because you're playing bluegrass in Buenos Aires.
Yeah, which they equate to Cletus on The Simpsons. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some negative connotations there. You
were teaching in Buenos Aires, and you had a few stellar, outstanding students who started getting really good, and then that became Che Apalache. And
yeah, because they're honestly they're more talented than me. All of them are more talented than me in some way or another, or in multiple ways, honestly. Not just as artists, but also as people. So with them, the synergy was interesting because I was like, harmonically, I'm an idiot. I can't tell you almost a single chord of a song, whereas Franco, Paul, and Martin picked that stuff out very quickly. Particularly Paul and Franco are very good with harmonically. And Martin is extremely fast with melody, just so fast. It's like lightning fast. I play it and then he's got it. And I can't do that. So I started noticing, I was like, damn, they're better than me now. That kind of sucks. So it hurt my ego at the beginning, but then I was like, well, let's just start a band. And we did that, and now it's good. Now we have a good working thing. And since they were my students, I think that I have cultivated, they've dealt with my crazy ass for so long. If they haven't abandoned me until now, it's unlikely they'll abandon me in the future. And I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to be a better human, and I think they are too. And you live in a van with each other for long enough, inevitably.
How big is the
there's
van?
going to be tiffs. It's a 2006 Toyota Sienna named Chutrin, and it is awesome. We took out the back seats, and everyone has their little comfortable zone. But on the second half of this tour we're about to do, or actually, no, sorry, almost all of this tour, we're going to have to rent a vehicle. But we're going on the road with a really cool lady named Jill, who's going to be our tour manager. She's going on the road with us. So now she's the first girl member of Che Apalache. She's going to be our tour manager, and we're going to be renting a vehicle out on the West Coast in the Midwest.
Oh, that's great. So Che Apalache plays a combination of Latin and bluegrass called Latin Grass, and Latin and bluegrass music, I mean, you can disagree with me, but they both have themes and attitudes that are pretty heteronormative, like a certain brand of machismo that kind of rings true for both worlds. How do you approach both of these like very straight worlds as a musician and as a human being who doesn't fit those stereotypes? I know you said you could code switch, but where are you?
I'm on a rainbow colored unicorn flying at them, and they don't know what to do with me, but I'm there like a little bee. Bzzz. Just like shoving it into their faces fabulously.
That's great. Good answer. All right, let's do one more question.
Okay.
Bela Fleck, go.
Bela Fleck was my childhood hero. Like I wanted to be Bela Fleck for a long, long time, and I studied his music, and I love his music. I love his discography. I love everything he's done. I never thought I'd meet the guy because I just thought, I would never meet those people. But then Che Apalache, and also the project that I worked with a bassist named Diego Sanchez, who's a freaking genius, for 6 years while I was teaching the guys in my band. I was working with this bass player who was giving me a musical education, and just kind of like following in the footsteps of Bela. It got to a point with Che Apalache when we were doing what we do that I realized, you know what? It is pretty clear that I have been inspired by this guy, and then I found the opportunity to reach out to him, and he graciously chose to recognize that I'm kind of like continuing his world music fusion narrative, you know, and then we became friends, and we produced an album with him. And what can I say? Bela's the man. He's shined his light on us. He's produced us in his basement. Abigail, his wife, is fantastic and very supportive, and Juno and Theo are sweet little kids. And we got to hang out there in Nashville and do this album, and just, I don't know, it kind of seems like a fairy tale, but now it's very much a part of our lives and our band history. And yeah, we all love Bela. We're just really, really, really grateful that he cared enough to want to do this.
He's such a great human being.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Okay, we do something silly on this podcast called the lightning round.
Okay.
Where I'm going to ask you a bunch of fun questions.
Go for it.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll just take a break, and then we'll come right back. Basic Folk is brought to you in part by Lindsay Myers and Elemento Management, who thinks if you like the artists on Basic Folk, you'll like acoustic troubadours Mick Dean and Tina and Her Pony. Check them out on Instagram and Spotify. And thanks to WIUP in Indiana, Pennsylvania, which airs Basic Folk 2 p.m. Eastern every Saturday. You can listen on 90.1 if you're in the Indiana, PA area, or at their website, wiupfm.org. All right, Joe Troop, are you ready for the lightning round?
I'm ready.
Tell me about your cat.
My cat's name is Ty. He talks a lot because he's Siamese, and I call him, well, I talk to him like, and I have a song for him called I could keep going, but so anyway, that's my cat.
What is your coffee order?
Too many. 3 a day, usually. I wake up, I drink coffee. I sometimes immediately drink another one. Sometimes the first one lasts a few hours if I'm feeling like I should be nice to my intestines. I just like coffee with a little bit of almond milk, unsweetened, please.
First album you bought with your own money?
With my own money? Oh, God, I have no idea. Thanks, Mom and Dad. I couldn't tell you. Sorry.
First concert?
Doc Watson with my brother, age 14,
Sweet.
Roadside.
Favorite vacation?
Favorite vacation? The one I just had at Watauga Lake in Tennessee with my spouse was really cool.
Dream collaboration?
Make an album with Tim O'Brien. Duh.
Beatles or Rolling Stones?
Beatles.
If you were going to have a baby, would you want to find out the gender or wait?
Would I want to wait, or would I want to find out its weight at birth? I don't know.
Do you understand the question?
I'm gay. I'd have to adopt it, so I'd know its gender. I wouldn't be. It's not like a random thing. I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't know.
Sounds like we'll have to come back to that one in a couple of years.
Okay. I would wait. Actually, yeah, I would wait.
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Wars, definitely.
What is the most beautiful place you've ever been to?
Smoky Mountains.
Oh, all right, Joe Troop, you did okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I did the best I could.
That's all we can
Cindy.
do. Yeah, it's all we can do.
This has been fun.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for going over time, and just for bringing all sorts of delightful contention to the podcast.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
You gotta just do the best you can. Joe Troop on Basic Folk. The album Che Apalache, produced by Bela Fleck, is out now. It's called Rearrange My Heart, and it's really lovely. I hope you listen to it. You can find show notes at cindyhouse.net. Sign up for our email list there. You can also get linked to us on Facebook, on our Facebook group, Basic Folk Basics. Thanks to Adam Corey for producing Basic Folk. Thanks to Laura McCarthy. Thanks to our business manager, Lindsay Myers. And Alex Stanton of Townspeople did our music. I'm Cindy House. I'll talk to you later. Okay, thanks for listening. Bye.